Hey everyone, welcome back to Thriving in Ambiguity, the podcast where we take on the complexities of technology and innovation and turn them into opportunities for growth. I'm your host, Steve Mancini, and today is an exciting day because we're going hands-on with the HPE Alletra MP. Over the past couple of episodes, we've explored the platform's disaggregated architecture, its AI-driven software features, and how it offers everything from peer persistence for disaster recovery to advanced deduplication and compression. In this episode, we're finally bringing those concepts to life with a live demo. Joining me is Solution Architect Dan Hercules, who will walk us through the platform in real time. Dan, welcome to Thriving in Ambiguity. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So thanks for having me, Steve. So Dan Hercules, so Solutions Architect for HPE, as Steve mentioned. Prior to this role, I spent a little over a decade at Dell Technologies, so our competitors. I got to experience a lot of different technologies and different ways of doing things from a Dell Technologies perspective. But then I was also in the partner space, so I got to learn about several other different technologies out there within the data center, particularly around storage and compute, and a little bit of AI. So really happy to be here today. And, Steve, we can say great things about a product and we can sing its praises, but sometimes the proof is in the pudding. Folks want to see what it looks like.
Yeah, no, and that's why I wanted to have you on today because getting people's hands on, getting them to see what the product actually does is huge. And so before we jump in, let me just quickly recap kind of what we talked about in past episodes, just so it's front of mind for you, in case there's something you want to touch on as we're going. But the first thing we kind of touched on was the architecture. And Alletra MP, disaggregated design, really separates itself from the competition because it gives you the ability to scale that compute capacity independently, which is really, really cool. The AI piece, being able to provision with intent-based provisioning and using real-time telemetry, like that's really, really awesome. The data efficiency, 4-to-1 data guarantee. I talked a lot about how we're guaranteeing that and how, engineers like yourself are sizing today. So if there's any opportunities to talk about sizing, we would love to hear your perspective on that. From a disaster recovery, leveraging something like peer persistence to give that seamless failover for active clusters, that's super important. But one of my favorite pieces really is the data services cloud console and how HPE is looking to manage all of that infrastructure and all of those different services. So with that being said, Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you,
Sure.
and you can dig into that demo. So why don't you share your screen and let's see what you got.
Absolutely. Let's go for it. So as you can see here, this is our GreenLake Cloud Platform welcome page. So immediately you notice that there are several different tiles, right? You have Compute Ops Management, you have Aruba Networking Central, you have Private Cloud for AI, which is new. I'll have to talk to you at some point there, Steve, which is pretty cool and exciting. Data services. So what we really were aiming for is the look and feel of a public cloud. So think your AWS and your Azure. And what I'm in right now is actually a workspace. So a workspace to us is what a VPC is to AWS or a VNet is to Azure. And you can do several different functions that you would expect from a cloud platform, like being able to manage this workspace. So things like identity and access management, to be able to create your own users and groups and being able to assign roles and permissions depending on the needs of that role. You can go in, you can set up authentications, you can do multi-factor authentication or set up single sign-on with your single sign-on vendor of choice. So all the things that you would expect from a platform as far as management, as far as security, and as far as auditing and reporting as well. We could spend a whole hour on each tile within the GreenLake Cloud platform. But let's stick with the data services for now. Many more demos to come here in the future. So if I go to my workspace home area, but right now for the Alletra MP platform, let's go ahead and go to data services. And when that launches, you're going to notice several other tiles particular to data services, such as backup and recovery, block storage, we'll be focusing on today. File storage is our GreenLake for file platform. Data Ops Manager, where you do more of your administrative tasks across your entire fleet of HPE products and services. Private Cloud Business Edition, and even Private Cloud AI, which I mentioned that's very very new.
That's new, right? That's the first I'm seeing that tile, which is cool.
That's right, as of a couple of weeks ago, that we announced at the beginning of the year. Like you mentioned before, Steve, as far as intent-based provisioning, this is where you will go. Let's say you have multiple different Alletra and Nimble arrays across your entire data center. This is where you would go and leverage AI and say, okay, well, I know what my application is. I know the capacity that I need. Let's go ahead and see what AI recommends. So if I want to pick a storage tier just for the sake of the demo, let's say the Alletra B10000, formerly Alletra for block, MP for block. And then we go to Windows file server, for example. We can name the volume Dan test. Doesn't like space. Dan tests. We only need a couple of volumes, each volume 30 gigabytes in size. We can select our host group, which I'll just randomly pick. Let's say, iSCSI host 1. No protection policy for now. Again, we'll review this here later on in the demo. And then when we hit continue, based off of what it sees across your entire ecosystem, it's going to recommend an array that best suits the needs of these workloads. And you know what? If it doesn't find anything for whatever reason, that's okay. Or if it recommends an array that you may feel isn't the correct one for you, no problem. You can manually select the system here. You can say, hey, let me just select manually, and you can choose the array that you see fit. So here you can see we have several. But I just wanted to showcase that, only because you touched on it earlier, Steve.
Yeah, so basically they're just selecting the application that they're going to run. And in the case that you just said there, it was like a Windows, database or something like that.
That's right.
And then, it knows that type of workload should have, XYZ hardware and everything. And so then it just chooses all of that behind the scenes for you. So it's kind of saving you a lot of time.
Correct. So it's looking at several different things. Like you mentioned, AI is a big part of our software stack, and all of our Alletra MP arrays and several other different arrays connect back to the GreenLake cloud platform, leveraging our AI ops. So for those of you familiar with InfoSight, that's essentially what it is. It's InfoSight under the covers, running all of your AI machine learning on the telemetry data that we're receiving from your arrays. So it's looking at several things like, all right, what's the performance overhead on the arrays? What is the capacity that we have on the array? Can it fulfill the protection requirement for our snapshots and replication? It looks at all these things when it makes that recommendation for you. And of course, like I said, you have the option to say, you know what, let me select my own.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very useful, especially if you have, thousands of things going on per week as a former system engineer, or sysadmin rather. You're wearing multiple hats and putting out lots of fires. Mm-hmm. One cool thing that I wanted to touch on really quick was also the setup service. So when you receive your new array, you're going to work with professional services to do a secure connection from your array to our GreenLake cloud platform. And we don't have anything that's ready to be onloaded today. But when you have that secure connection and your array is onboarded into the GreenLake cloud platform, you have the option to come here and select the array, and you can go through the initialization and setup process, or you can create a blueprint ahead of time. So think of every time you deploy an array or a server, what are the things that stay pretty constant? You're going to use the same NTP server, same DNS server, same Active Directory credentials, several other things like that, where instead of entering it in manually every time, you can just apply the blueprint, have all those things pre-populated, and they can go in and customize the things that are unique to that array or to that server. So I think that's just really cool and really useful. So I wanted to showcase that a little bit. Okay,
so then when the array goes online, it's just going to, download that config and then kind of like speed up the process?
You got it. It's almost like a profile download for let's say your phone or something from, Intune, let's say. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I got a little too ahead of myself there, but Again, just want to hit the drop down and go to block storage. So for the purpose of this array, we're going to create some host groups and provision storage to those host groups and show you how that all connects. And just to preface that, you could do all these things from the array itself. We're not unallowing you from logging into the array UI and creating host groups and provisioning volumes and all that stuff. I think the real key thing here is that you can do it from anywhere with an internet connection across your entire ecosystem of arrays and servers, depending on your needs. So it just vastly simplifies the entire process. So here we're going to go to our block storage, and it's really going to tell us a lot of information about all of our storage across our ecosystem, right? So you get to look at your capacity metrics. You can see workloads by capacity consumed here in the workloads section. By performance, you get a list of your volumes from top read latency, write latency, IOPS, and throughput. We're actually going to revisit this later so we can show you how cross-stack analytics and topology into the infrastructure looks like. So you can get more of that fine-tuned troubleshooting and details on how everything interconnects with each other within the data center. And then you get a quick glimpse at, hey, what are your protection settings? And one cool thing too are announcements. So you can see if there are any new updates available, any exciting new news from HPE that pertains to you, and then if there are any issues. So similar to InfoSite, we're going to have a section that says, hey, here are some known issues, some known security risks. Here are some recommendations that we may have for you to better utilize your arrays. So if you see growth that's inconsistent, it'll say, hey, we recommend maybe adding more capacity here in the future. Or if you see certain volumes where there's contention for whatever reason, we may recommend turning on quality of service, or maybe doing some migration of VMs from one host to another, things like that. So pretty neat.
Yeah.
All right. So let's provision some hosts and add them to host groups. So we're going to do here, since this is an administrative task, we're going to go to Data Ops Manager. We're going to see a similar dashboard as the block storage and receive a lot of information across, all of your hosts, performance, volumes, virtual machines, buckets if you leverage object storage, all that good stuff. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the dashboard and we're going to say data access. And from data access, let's go ahead and create a host group. And we already have a pre-populated name here for the purpose of the demo. Go ahead and give it a name. And let's say you have a brand new host. Let's create one as well. Here, we're going to give it a naming convention that aligns to the demo. It'll be iSCSI, and the operating system will be a Windows server. We hit next. Going to give us a list of initiators. So again, assuming that everything was networked correctly and your targets and initiators and all of your iSCSI targets are set up correctly. And let's go ahead and locate this. Let's see, give it an IP address, hit add, done. And the guy that we're looking for has been added to the initiators for this host. We hit next, get a quick summary of what we just did, and hit done. All right, verify that everything here is correct, hit next, done. We'll go ahead and reload this page. And we'll search for G05. And there is our host group with our host. And there's its initiator. So it's as simple as that, just the way you would do it on the array. So the next thing we're going to do is, let's provision storage. So now, since this is a data service, not an admin service, we'll go to block storage. We'll go to the dashboard. Let's go to storage. And let's create a new volume. And for the sake of this demo, let's say the storage tier is Alletra 6000. What type of workload do we need? Again, we can say a Windows file server. As you saw, there's a slew of different applications to choose from. Name of the volume, using the naming convention for the demo for simplicity's sake. Go5.
This ties back to that intent-based provisioning, right?
It does, right? So instead of going through and doing it manually, you can just leverage AI.
Yep.
Do it all for you. Host group will be the Go5 that we created earlier. Yep. Protection policy, we'll say none for now, but as you can see, there were protection policies created beforehand where you can set daily snapshot schedules, you can create replication schedules, a combination of both, and then you can apply it to your volumes and your host groups later on in the future. So for now, we'll just say no protection, because we can do a whole demo on replication and snapshots later on in the future. All right, it'll give us a list of systems here in a second. Using intent-based provisioning, it recommends the Alletra 6000 that we have here. We'll go with that for now. Location we can leave at default. Auto LUN IDs we can leave at default. Hit continue. And in the options section, you can go back and change anything if you see an error. If not, and everything looks good, go ahead and hit submit. But while that's working, if you ever want to check the status of a task, such as what we just did, you can hit the task button here, and it'll give you a list of things that were performed in block storage and data ops manager as well. Since this is a lab environment, we have several other folks doing their thing, but this is where you would go to investigate if a task failed for whatever reason. You can go in here and you can double click and, well, I wonder why maybe there was a I don't know, unexport or delete host that failed. You can go in here and you can look at, the status of that, when it occurred, and go even more in depth at the logs. So everything is tracked and audited, and it allows you to go in and do further investigation if needed. Let's go back to block storage, go to volumes, storage and volumes. Let's see if we see is that my G05? And there you can see our volume. And if we click on it, there's no workloads currently on the volume and hasn't been mapped to the host yet, which we'll be doing here in the next step. But if you click on it, this is where you go to see several different metrics on that volume, everything from capacity utilization, your data reduction savings, right, performance, any protections such as snapshots, replication, as well as several other tabs where you can go into even more detail for capacity, performance, protection, and access. So let's go ahead and map this volume to our host. So using an RDP tool of choice, here I'm going to use the one that's particular to this demo. Let me go ahead and start that. It may take a second. Oh, there it is. Right. It's a little, I said no for now. It's a little tight. So let me go compact mode, full screen. There we go. And HPE is going to provide several different tools for you to make this process as seamless and easy as possible. For example, we have what's called our HPE Connection Manager, which you can deploy to all of your hosts. And what we're going to do is we're going to add discovery port for our array. So we were the Alletra 6000, right? Doesn't matter which iSCSI subnet you choose. I'll just pick the first one for now and hit OK. All right. And then under volumes, here you can see the volume that was created and presented to us. Go ahead and click on that, hit connect. You can leave everything default or make changes if you choose to, hit OK. We'll wait for the green check mark. All right, discovered it. We have redundant connections, 2 different iSCSI subnets for failover. So that's normal. See that we have 1 disk, the disk size, disk count. Minimize this for now. And for those of you Windows admins out there, this should be very, very familiar. So we're going to go to disk management. It's going to be presented as a disk. Bring that disk online. Initialize disk. And then we'll go ahead and create a new simple volume. Assign it a drive letter. Always leave it at E for now. And give it a name. And there you go. Your volume's ready to receive data. Oops.
Nice.
Let's go ahead and do that, actually. So if I minimize, too many windows within windows.
Yeah.
Let me minimize that one. And if we go to File Explorer, we now see that new volume E has been presented. And we can use a file creation tool just to showcase that the drive is readily available. I'm not going to create 50 files, but we can create, let's just say 5 for the sake of this demo. Whoops. Leave it at 1024 megabytes, hit create. And there you go. You can see that it's, writing files to that volume, no problem. And there we go. So let's go ahead and close that.
Pretty cool tool there.
Yeah, I mean, it just really streamlines, makes everything super easy, which is what we're going for, right? I mean, we want to make it as easy and as seamless as possible. And if we go ahead and reload this page, you should see some telemetry data. And if not, that's okay. We can use a different volume as an example, because I really wanted to showcase that piece. So if we go back to storage, and let's say, get rid of that filter. Let's just pick any volume here. Let's do a VMFS volume. And select that volume name. Since this volume is actively receiving data, little, but there's some performance metrics here. What I really wanted to show, when we go to the performance tab, then you can see things across, broken down by 8 hours, days, weeks, months, custom time period. You can really dig in deep if your end users are saying that they're experiencing latency issues. Maybe there's some contention on reads and writes. Maybe throughput isn't as expected. You can really come in here and do some investigating. You can look at capacity information, so you can look at capacity trends and growth, so you can help you better prepare for any expansions in the future. Or maybe do a deeper dive into maybe there's a rogue user that's uploading tons of data they shouldn't be to the array, which can negatively affect snapshots, right? We've all been there where you have a snapshot that inflated to several terabytes because you had a user doing a data dump onto their file share or home directory or something, and now you have this snapshot that's massive and taking up a ton of space. And you can look into, again, access information and any other issues that may arise.
Yeah, I know I ran into this years ago when I was an IT manager, and I gave this example in one of the other episodes, how, I had an end user reporting performance issues, and we just didn't have the tools to really track it back to where the issue was. And,
Yep.
And then you always run into the weird thing. Well, is it the user? Because it's one of those things where it's like you go, send some over to help, and it works fine.
Yep.
And then we leave, and then it's like, oh, well, it's not working again. And so is it the end user, or is there actually something wrong? And being able to kind of dig in behind the scenes and see what's happening, man, is hugely important. I mean, it took us forever to find the problem. And eventually it was a misconfiguration, but boy, I'm telling you, it took months.
Right. No, and to add a little bit more to that point, it's just built into the GreenLake Cloud platform. So it's nothing you have to deploy separately like on a VM. Mm-hmm. It's just part of it just comes with the entire stack, which is, I think is pretty compelling. Free is always good. Customers love free. So when you go to Data Ops Manager, right, because this is an administrative task, not necessarily a data management task, you go to Data Ops Manager, and let's say you have a particular end user that's complaining about a volume. Let's say they're seeing some IO contention. And let's go to our volume section. Volumes, sort by IOPS. And let's say, okay, well, let's take a look. Let's say this is happening on this particular volume. Let that open up. And we're look at performance. Let this whole latency thing load. And you see here, there are several different options. So you can take a look at our latency, our IOPS, throughput, and do some investigating. But the cool thing is you can see how everything is interconnected. So we can go to Topology Insights. We can give this a second to load. May take a minute. But what it's going to do is going to give you a breakdown of your volumes, which data stores are connected to, which hosts those data stores are connected to, and how all the different pieces of your environment are connected together. And it'll give you a nice little map of where you should start investigating if you see something that's out of place. So for an example, you have a list of your different VMs, right? I know it's a little hard to see, I apologize. But you have a list of all your different VMs, what VMDK or what disks they're leveraging, what data store those are contained in, which hosts are hosting that data store, right? Which array volume are those data stores on for that host, and then it goes back to the array in question, right? Really helpful here again is that you can go in and say, all right, well, let me investigate a particular volume. I don't see anything out of place there. Maybe there's a particular VMDK that has a latency issue or a contention issue. And then you can start looking at the data store and see how the data store overall is performing. And if this is a noisy neighbor that's affecting other workloads you may not have known about, right? So, I mean, I think just the point we're trying to drive home here is we give you a slew of tools out of the gate that you can leverage for just your day-to-day troubleshooting and investigation. And it's not just for VMware, it's just across all of your applications, regardless if it's VMware, if it's SQL, if it's Oracle, etc.
Yeah. So you would likely have seen maybe some sort of IO issue, and then you're going to dig in a little bit further, and then boom, now you're going to be able to have access to see, like you're saying, maybe it's a noisy neighbor, maybe you have a VM it's not configured properly, or maybe somebody's hammering it. And I'm guessing those would be more in red if the throughput area was higher than, obviously these are running normally.
You got it.
But it's color coded, so you might be able to oh my God, this one's in red, and then you can dig in further and see what's going on. No, this is awesome. Yeah. I mean, for me to see this in the past, it would probably have required me to have Wireshark running and doing packet tracing and all of this stuff, and it's kind of all built in.
You got it. Yeah, and you just have an ability to drill down and just do more investigating without the need of multiple tools, like you said. Mm-hmm. It just cuts off hours in the problem solving process. So which for any system administrator is valuable, right? It allows you to focus on other things, more important tasks for sure.
Yep.
And then if we click on one of the objects themselves, I ended up clicking on one of the volumes. It takes you back to Topology Insights, but particular to that VM. So then if this VM is what's causing issues, then you can dig even deeper, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just that granularity that customers love without the need to, leverage multiple tools or deploy a separate application or whatever, like some other folks out there. So
yeah, I don't think I remember other people being able to see it at the VM level. You may have analytics, kind of what's going on from a data store level, but going all the way to the VM seems pretty unique.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Steve. And, when I was working for a partner, I worked very closely with Pure. And, Pure has had the ability to do topology insights as well, but it was really specific to VMs. It will tell you the whole topology of your VMware environment, but it wasn't something like, oh, well, what if it wasn't VMware? Then what? What do you do? You kind of want that granularity for any application, regardless of whether or not it's VMware, maybe it's Hyper-V, or maybe it's a SQL application, Oracle, what have you. I think that's where we differentiate.
Okay, no, that's really good information. So it extends beyond VMware to different applications, and okay, no, that's really good information.
Yeah, Steve. So that's really what I wanted to showcase today. I hope people found it really cool and enlightening and helpful, because I feel like the GreenLake Cloud platform just isn't talked about enough. I think that's really what makes us unique in the market, is that we have our own cloud, right, for all of our products, where you can do all of your data access management, your administrative tasks, your data management tasks, all from a single pane of glass, without having to log into all the different arrays, different hosts, that sort of thing, which just, again, time is money and drastically cuts down on time for our administrators out there.
Yeah, no, I imagine once you get familiar with the platform, being able to jump back and forth between potentially networking, compute, storage, data protection, all of that is hugely helpful. And like you're saying, really reduces a lot of administrative time, because I only need to really understand one tool set.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you so much for giving us this hands-on look at the HPE Alletra MP and all the different storage that's kind of behind the scenes. It's one thing to kind of read about all these features, but it's a whole different experience to actually see them live and in action and getting your hands on. So to all the people out there that are kind of watching or listening, I hope you found this helpful. And don't forget to, if you did, like and subscribe and kind of follow along, because Dan and I are going to be digging into a lot of different things. And in the next episode, we're going to bring Dan back. So Dan, you're coming back, and we're going to talk more about private cloud AI and how we can, how you can deliver AI into your data center, and what that kind of means for people's environments and how they might be able to leverage it. Because I think, I think people think it's a lot more confusing and a lot harder than maybe it actually is in practice. So we're going to dig into that and really kind of understand what's going on in AI. Thanks again for tuning in to Thriving in Ambiguity. I'm Steve Mancini here with Dan Hercules. Together, we'll see you next time as we continue to turn unknowns into opportunities for growth. Thanks, everyone.